Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the video. Welcome to my garage. In this video, we are finally going to be welding up the rear lower control arm for Wratchet. So here's the mock-up that I have so far. These are the top and bottom plates. Again, these were made from the exact same DXF files that the template for the lower control arm, the temporary lower control arm, was made out of. And I had these laser cut, so these are the exact same size as the one that's down there. Remembering, because of my rear suspension, the distance from the bushing and the uniballs needs to be very precise. So I'm using the same jig that I used when I made the wooden template. I'm going to use the same jig for this template. Or not template, this is the real deal. And now what I'm doing is I've got this set up so that the uniballs and the bushing, remember there's a bushing down here, but up here there's a bung because that's going to be a high mend. But I figured out how far I needed to space up the piece, which was 1/8 of an inch, so that it comes just center to the bushing. You can see the bushing is also sitting on an 1/8 inch piece of steel. This, the control arm is going to be 1 3/4 in total thickness. Essentially, although these are 1.6, essentially I'm assuming that I've got 1.5 inches on the sides, and then these pieces are essentially 0.125 inches thick. They're a little bit thinner just off of using the gauges that they had available, but it's essentially 1/8 of an inch. So that makes the arm's total thickness 1 3/4, and the outside diameter of the bung is 1 3/4. So the arm is up on 1/8, the bushing is up on 1/8. However, the uniballs at the spindle end are thicker, so they are just sitting on the ground, and the plates are being held up so that when I put all this together and weld everything on there, everything should be centerline. This bung is actually 1 1/4 inch thickness. So I cut some little tiny plates to fill up the gap in there, and then I put a hole in there, and I put a hole in the control arm plates so that once I get this in there, I can do a rosette weld in there. And so essentially where I'm at now is I've got it mocked up. I'm going to run around with the TIG welder and just put a couple of tacks to hold the uniballs and the bushing and the bung in place. And then I'm going to take it upstairs, and I need to form all of the pieces that go around there. But I want the uniballs and the bushings and everything in place so that as I have the metal come up to them, I know how much I need to cope out, and I can make all that really nice. Alright, here we go. Now I have all of these side pieces cut, bent, trimmed, whatever you want to call it. It's really just a labor of love on these. They take quite a while. I spent most of the day doing these, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. And you can see, you know, I got these pieces and these pieces. I've got the side pieces, but then I added these straight pieces here, here, then there's a piece that goes across here. These pieces are to give it strength this way, because it's going to have a coil carrier and a bypass shock over here, so there's going to be a lot of force this way. And then this piece across here is to give it some strength this way, because if you think about it, when the spindle's on here and the rear tire is accelerating or braking, there's going to be a lot of twisting or torsional force on this control arm. And if I didn't put in some extra bracing here, these areas are too large where there would just be nothing. And that would be really, really weak. So adding these pieces in here gives it a lot of strength, but they'll all be on the inside, so when the top plate is on here and it's all welded up, you won't even see those in there. So the next step is I'm going to take this downstairs. I'm going to set it up on the welding table just like it is. With my MIG welder, I'm going to tack some of these in place. Then I'm going to take those pieces out and I'm going to put some real good welds in there with the MIG welder. Then I'll take those pieces, I'll put them back in there, but I'm going to flip everything around, and then I'm going to tack everything in place with the TIG welder. And then I can put the top plate on, tack all that in place, and if everything looks good, then I can weld it all up solid. Alright, now everything is tacked up. It's pretty much ready to be solid welded at this point, but before I did that, I wanted to throw it back into the jig one more time to make sure that nothing got out of whack. So I've got a line down here that it's up against, and the bushing here is snug with the 2x4 like it's supposed to be, and then the uniballs here are snug with the 2x4 on this end. So my distance, my length, which is 24 inches, is right on where it needs to be. You can see the stitch marks here where from the underside I welded those plates that go this way to the control arm. And then now that I've got the other piece on here, what I did is, see if I can catch that in the light, I punched holes in here right where those pieces are, and I'll put some rosette welds in there so that I can grab a hold of those pieces under there. Otherwise, if they were just floating in there, it really wouldn't give me much strength. So this is the bottom plate, and it'll have all these rosette welds to grab a hold of that. But at this point, I think I'm ready to throw it back on the welding table and just start solid welding everything. Now I've got the control arm itself welded up solid. I'm actually quite happy with it. This pickled oil steel is really easy to weld, so that's kind of nice. I TIG welded the arm, but then I ran around with my MIG welder. Woo, that's hot. I ran around with my MIG welder and I MIG welded in the bung and the bushing because it's so much easier for me to do it that way. I don't know, whenever I TIG weld like bungs in, I end up getting the bungs way overheated, so it's a lot easier for me to control that with the MIG. And I use the MIG for all my rosette welds too. Now I need to weld in these uniball cups, and because these are round and real precise, I mean obviously this is round too, but this is so much less precise than a uniball. So when you weld in these, you pick up a slug or a plug and you put that in there. I know what goes in here. Okay. So obviously that's a really snug fit. You put that in there. Now when I weld this, it's going to deform a little bit just from the heat. This will keep it from deforming too much. It's still going to deform a little bit. And when I'm done, I don't think this will fall right out. It's threaded here so that you can put a puller on there and pull it out, or sometimes you can use a press and just tap it out. But either way, I've got the slug in here, so now I'm going to weld that one and pop this out. Then I'll do the same thing on this end. Alright, so now I've got this welded up. It's most of the way cool. It's still a little bit warm, but you can see the slug is still in there. And although it fell right in there before I welded it, now it's not coming out. When I did the uniballs on the front spindles, I actually machined a nice piece that went around here so that I could thread a bolt in there and pull it out. But it wasn't as hard to get out of there as I thought. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take a socket, put it on there so that I can start to draw it up nice and straight, and then once it bottoms out on this socket, I'm going to try to just thread a bolt in there and tap it out with a hammer. I don't know if I'm lazy or what, but I don't feel like spending a couple hours trying to machine something if it's not absolutely necessary. I felt it bottom in the socket. Now it's pulled its way up to the top, but I need to push it out the rest of the way from behind. All right, there's my slug, and there's the welded in piece. Now I'm going to do the other side, and then we've got to put some straps around the uniballs, and I'm going to put a strap around the bushing. If this video seems a little choppy, that's because I welded this over about 5 days, and I was just welding a lot of the steps as I was doing it. Let me take you down for a little close-up of the arm here, because it is awesome. Here is the bushing in the rear with the strap around it for extra strength. Here is the heim on the other end, on the inside, with the lock nut on there. It's got about a 1/4 inch that it can still come in, which is good, and it could easily go out a 1/4 inch as well. So most of the heim is buried in there for a lot of strength, but there is still some adjustability. These are the tabs for the coil carrier, and these are the tabs for the bypass shock absorber. These I just MIG welded. These are the uniballs for the spindle. What are you crying about, dude? Kev, what are you crying about? I'm actually at this point feeling like these are really strong. I mean, there's a lot. By the time I had the welds on the uniball and then the welds on the straps, and I wrapped it all the way around. On the back side, it goes down a couple inches as well. We'll see if I actually bend them out while I'm beating around with it, but I really feel like those are going to be really strong. I think it's going to have enough strength for torsional loads. Again, that remains to be seen. You still could weld a piece underneath here. That wouldn't have any problem with the drive shaft or anything, but I'm not going to do that because I really feel like with all this material here and the shock tabs, and if you remember, there's additional bracing running underneath here as well, so I really feel like that's going to be pretty strong. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching it. It was actually a really fun build because at this point I have the control arm, and I know that I've said this in other videos, but when you do something like this and you put so much time and effort into the design and the templates, and then all the labor in actually forming it up, when you're done, you know, this is a control arm, but right now to me, this feels like a work of art. Don't worry, I'm still gonna put it on Wratchet and beat the crap out of it, but it's such an accumulation of so much work. Very satisfying. But regardless, thanks for watching the video, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope it's helping you with whatever you guys are working on, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.